The same pattern that you see in abusive or controlling relationships is the same pattern that's going on with our nation right now. There's 8 stages in an abusive, controlling relationship and abusive leaders of nations. So we're going to go through the 8 stages, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. I'm Tami Green. I've been a life coach for a long time. I've actually survived abusive relationships. All right, let's go. I've become increasingly alarmed as I watch the news. And trust me, I don't even like the news. I'm of the thought of let's be positive psychology so we can stay focused on our own lives, which is a skill that I'm going to teach you in order to counteract a lot of this. However, I had to think through what is it that I'm seeing, the confusion of the country, the way the leadership style is compared to what I've survived and gone through, what I've helped people come out of in individual things. So I did the research, and there are 8 stages that line up. And today we're going to go through the 8 stages. And I've got some good visuals for you, and I've got all kinds of good stuff. Because when you put the research on coercive control in relationships side by side with the research on democratic decline, let's just call it that, they map almost perfectly. Not because a country is a narcissist. That's not what I'm saying. By the way, I just want to make a disclaimer. I'm not going to be like narcissists are evil in this. I've worked with cluster B personalities before helping them. And so it's not like one's evil. This is not judgmental. This is just, you need to be educated. Because if you're suffering, there's a reason why. And there was a time in my life where I realized, wait a second. There are people out there that not only don't want our good, there are nefarious people out there. There are people that enjoy hurting us. So the more we can become not naive and educated, the better off we're going to be. Basically, what this is an architecture of control. The way you take over someone's mind and their life and you take their power away, it's the same. And these people are very good at it, and it doesn't seem like this is happening, and it's very confusing. I've worked with the smartest people you can imagine who get caught up in this, and they're like, what just happened? There are lots of people in America right now who are super smart too, who've been duped. Now, the way you take over someone's power, there's stages, but basically you start small, and you start by promising them or getting them excited in some ways. And then you slowly work on them to make them doubt their own reality. And I think that's a marker of this is we start to doubt our own reality and align with their version of reality. And it happens very quickly through some techniques. And what's important here for you is the way out of it is the same. And we're going to go through the 8 stages, how it works, and then the way out of it. All right. I'm going to show you some images right now of some things that's happening in this country so I can use them to show you how these things are happening that you may not even notice. I want to say it's very important that you fact check me. One of the things I want to teach you is to fact check, to think critically. And I welcome in the comments respectful debate. We need to keep our minds open to all kinds of information, and we need to have a framework in our brains to filter through information both. Imagine if we all did this. Here's something most people don't know. In 2026, the V-Dem Institute, one of the most respected political service research bodies in the world, released their annual democracy report. What they found about the United States stopped me cold. It was worse than I thought. The U.S. Liberal Democracy Index dropped 24% in a single year. Now, whether you believe in liberal, conservative, that's not the point. I want you to think about the Liberal Democracy Index equaling a person's ability to be independent and think for themselves. So again, just stay open-minded, listen, rewind if you need to, but this is really important, and I think you're going to get it. That is the fastest 1-year democratic deterioration for the United States in their modern data set. The V-Dem Institute reclassified the United States from liberal democracy to electoral democracy for the first time in over 50 years. We're going to get into that a little bit more, but just so you know, America's classification completely changed. And it moved away from a democracy by quite a lot in 1 year. And if you've ever been in one of these controlling relationships, you can look back and say, oh my gosh, I changed. I changed who I was, what I believed, what I talked about very rapidly, because these people are good. Now, I'm not a political scientist, but I'm a life coach who's worked with thousands of people recovering from manipulation, gaslighting, and coercive control. And when I read the specific language, a rapid concentration of powers in the presidency. And I put it together, it was identical. Now, isn't that the same if you've been in a controlling relationship? They will have all the power. You will not have the power. My situation, that's why I stayed for a very long time. My power was gone. It was nearly impossible for me to leave. And y'all, if you wonder, if you're looking at this for somebody else and you wonder why someone doesn't wake up quickly to what's happening to them or they don't leave, this is why. The controllers make it really hard. And if you're thinking to yourself, how was I duped into this situation in our country? I'm going to show you. So the other thing besides the consolidation of power in the president, unbelievable when I was watching it. I probably have more insight than a lot of people because I never want to be controlled again. So I saw the signs. I want you to be able to as well. The other thing that's been unbelievable is undercutting institutional checks and balances and taking civil service, like Doge looked like it was cutting fat and waste, which, trust me, I'm all for that. I'm all for being efficient. I'm all for being effective. I don't want anyone spending my taxpayers' dollars, but that's not what's behind the cuts. They're cutting civil service. They're cutting anyone that could be used against the power. And then certain things like intimidating the press and the academia. This has happened historically. I'm lining up what happens historically so you can see how it's worked. I did something nobody had done, and it took me a while to figure out how I was going to make this make sense. So I took the research from 2 different fields and I put them together, and they lined up into these 8 stages. Okay, the first stage is baited. And we can also say in our terminology, love bombed. In relationships, the researcher Lenore Walker identified this decades ago. There's tension building, there's small conflicts, there's warning signs you overlook. You make excuses, you try to keep the peace, you tell yourself you'll get better. So I know this one intimately. I was married to someone who was super mean, and I was super naive. It was the perfect storm. I kept telling myself, it's not that bad. He's just stressed. If I were better at this, he wouldn't be like this. I need to get better at this, which actually became the downfall of the relationship because I did get better at it. But you're baited at the beginning by the hope of what it could be. You're baited by the excitement. You're baited by the love bombing. They tell you everything. They make you feel heard. They make you feel adored. They give you things. They buy you things. They help you out of problems. All these different things to give you a bait to come their way. And when they do that, you are ignoring all the other things. And there's a physiological response. And this is about psychology. We love that feeling. We love the feeling of being understood. Why do you think so many people loved Adolf Hitler. You look at the footage, they adored him. And many, to the very end, believed everything he said, and he could make them so excited and so happy. You're not wrong to have fallen for this if you never knew about it. And one thing I like about what's going on now is we are learning more to watch this, because narcissistic traits have been very rewarded in our society. And we're not going to get into the traits and how they can even be helpful, but the abuse is unbelievable. And I don't want people to fall for it anymore. Now, when we look at countries, it happens very much like individuals. Authoritarian leaders don't typically just seize power in a coup, especially if there's an election process. What happens in these countries where there's elections is these people are going to campaign on real problems that real people are experiencing. We look to our leadership that we elect, who should be working for us. They're very good at identifying problems that they can bait you with. And people vote for them because they are addressing things that matter to you. There are two political scientists, Levitsky and Ziblatt. They call this a normal beginning. It looks like democracy. It feels like democracy. The person says all the right things. This stage is what I call a structural parallel to what happens with coercive control in individuals. The mechanisms differ a bit, love bombing versus political rhetoric, but it's basically the same. It's a normal, hopeful beginning. Here's why this matters. If you can't recognize the first stage, you can't see the next one coming. They all build. And I want you to know all of them so you will know earlier. And anyone who goes through this does a post-mortem and they're like, how could I have understood this earlier? I know so many people that are like, how did I not see this before? So you need to be able to see it all. This next stage is captured. This one lines up almost perfectly in the two fields. In relationships, the researcher Evan Stark identified this as an ongoing strategy to control daily life. It's not one big event. It's 1,000 small moves all day, every day, all day, every day. Where you can go, who you can talk to, what you can spend, how you think, worse than anything. It seeps into everything. How you feel, what you're afraid of. In a country, Levitsky and Ziblatt call this capturing the referees. You fill the courts with loyalists. You put your people in charge of law enforcement. You take over watchdog agencies, the very institutions designed to hold power accountable, gradual, appointment by appointment. The diagnosis is capture. The independent checks that exist to protect you are replaced by loyal control. And if you think it happens quickly, what you need to realize is before they ever get to you, they had a plan. It's not like the way you think, you have to think through everything. It's just natural to them. And political power usually has been consolidated before they ever step up in office, because they've been doing this to all kinds of people behind the scenes. So there's a big plan. If you've been in a relationship with someone who does this, you know the feeling. You look around one day and realize, I don't have anyone anymore. No one's checking on me. I don't have an outside perspective. I'm surrounded by their people, their narrative, their version of reality. Sound familiar? Stage 3, isolated or silenced. Whatever resonates. And they kind of both resonate, and I'll tell you why. The research is clear on both sides. Stark's work shows isolation as a core tactic, cutting someone off from friends, family, anyone who might say this isn't right. And I will tell you, going into social situations is like PTSD. you feel this is something I had to come to terms with myself. Once you've been in these situations, going back and reclaiming your position with people feels terrifying. There's a certain level of anxiety that you have that something bad is going to happen because you're talking to other people. And that's where a therapist can really help you deal with this. And I think there's a lot of people in the country that feels that way too. Is like, I can't talk about it. There was a law that was passed, or an edict or whatever, that anyone that came into this country recently had to show their social media. Why is that? Because they want to see if they support the leader. My brother lived in Vietnam. It's a communist country. A lot of great stuff happens, a lot of great people there, but they controlled what he saw on his computer, always seeing if he was going to say something against the leadership. We've had freedom in this. Guess what? It's been taken away. And it is terrifying. Now, there's some other isolation tactics that happen with individuals and the country. When I was in my worst relationship, I literally didn't have anyone to call. What happened? It was not just isolating me, it was going behind my back and creating friction within my support group. So my support group began to not trust me, even family members. This is a level of betrayal I still deal with today, that how hard that was, that my family believed this person. So then it made their control even more. I had no one to go to. And in what we're calling democratic backsliding, it's called sidelining the opposition. So we target the press, go after business leaders who criticize, you marginalize rival politicians by always saying it was their fault, always blaming, and making dissent costly, right? So in my situation, if I left professionally, economically, legally, unbelievably hard to leave, because those things would happen to me. And that's where people are scared today. If you looked at the beginning of this administration, there were a few brave souls that said, I'm not going to do that. And the powers that be really went after them. They went after them legally by withholding contracts, business, things like that. And a lot didn't. A lot of people, most that we see, at least in the news, just did what they were told. And it's been really hard to watch some very strong people completely humiliate themselves in front of the leadership. And I get it. It's scary. You have livelihood, you have your family. I get there's reasons not to stand up. Okay. I was in that. I had lots of reasons not to stand up. And a lot of these people are in the middle of this. They don't even understand what's going on. But I hope that you'll be able to stand up for yourself. Maybe loudly, maybe quietly. You get to choose. So the function here is identical. We're going to remove the outside witnesses. Remove the people who can say, this isn't normal. Once those voices are gone, the only voice you hear is the one controlling you. And it's interesting. I told you a little bit about how in my relationship, my support system was eroding, right? Because they worked on my outside support system. Now, what's happening here? Who's our outside support? NATO? Guess what? Hostile towards NATO now. The people that would support us, the countries that would support us, have been gone after. Isolation is becoming the norm. And so we were cooperative with the world. We kept our interest good, but there was a lot of symbiotic relationships that worked. Now we don't have relationships. The whole world hates America right now, except for very few countries. Everyone hates America. Everyone either hates you if you're in these situations, or they just think you're crazy, or all kinds of things. Either way, you're isolated. And the isolation of America is unbelievable. I can't even believe it. Throwing immigrants out, that's a whole nother political situation that I understand. Immigration policy, it's a policy thing, but I want you to look beneath that and see what's really happening from this framework. Stage 4 is escalation. Now, I want to be honest with you. This stage matches in some ways doesn't, but it's enough of a framework where we can continue this so we can think in our brains how individuals and nations can do this, right? It's about some kind of event that in escalation, the primary research on this at the beginning was about escalation of physical. Now, we have that in America now. Look at the headlines about ICE. We have extreme physical happening. And so in this stage, escalation in a personal relationship, physical escalation, in a nation, aggression. But I will tell you that it doesn't have to be physical to escalate. So in your situation, tell me what it was for you. So in my situation, it was not just physical aggression. It can be any kind of escalation. It doesn't have to be physical, because these tactics, they don't care the form of abuse. It's whatever works. So there's some kind of escalation where it just becomes intolerable. And the pain of staying, something cracks. And I know that there's some things happening, the escalation in America right now. There's some type of pain that people are feeling, whether they can't financially deal with things or the physical aggression, all kinds of things, but it's escalation. It's actually crazy how much it's escalated and how cracks are starting to form and people are starting to really wake up and want something different. In democratic decline, firing of officials, abrupt policy reversals, we've literally had all of that. These are acceleration points. And things that have been slowly degrading escalate. They get bigger, and that pushes us over the limit too. Now, what happens is the tension is starting to build, and then something breaks. And after the break, things are never quite the same. Now, stage 5 is the honeymoon. This stage is devastating because it feels like hope. It feels like things are finally getting better. This is when you hear, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. And then the love bombing happens. And in relationships, Walker and Dutton and Painter's research on trauma bonding identifies this as the apology phase. Affection, promises to change, gifts, attention, and it creates a bond that's actually stronger than if the abuse had never happened. It's intermittent reward, which is the most confusing of all. In democratic backsliding, there's a rewriting of the rules, changing election laws, redrawing districts, modifying constitutional procedures, but framing it as, it's okay, we're going to reform, we're making things better. We're making things more efficient. It sounds like it's beneficial to you, but it's not. It's for a nefarious reason. So a lot of people do latch on to, nationally and certainly in relationships, these grandiose or small gestures that things are going to change or things are going to get better. And the fact is that both involve something that looks like resolution. The mechanisms differ. It's emotional bonding versus legal restructuring, but the function is the same. Buy compliance. Buy compliance. I'm going to buy your compliance. A lot of people think the danger has passed. And I've watched this with our country, and I'm like, oh my gosh, people, wake up, please. I want to save you from this. But here is where it gets worse, because after the honeymoon, things get worse. And I told some people when they started seeing like the ICE protests, things are going to get a lot worse. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. Spirals stage 6. So after the honeymoon comes spiraling. Spiraling is loud and clear in both fields. Walker's research shows the cycle repeats, and each time the incidents get shorter and the severity increases. What used to be months between a crisis becomes weeks, then days. The space to recover, to think clearly, to plan, the space shrinks until there's almost nothing left. It's one big spiral. On the national side, the V-Dem Institute's data shows backsliding happens as a series of compounding, accelerating changes, not a big event. It's a cascade. Each change enables the next. The safeguards that were there at the beginning that we didn't catch, they're all gone because they were captured in stage 2, and then you were isolated in stage 3. This is the acceleration phase. And here's what makes it psychologically devastating. You start to believe this is just how things are. The abnormal becomes normal. The crisis becomes background noise. You stop being able to imagine anything different. It's crazy what we tolerate as a country. Just looking at the news cycle, where 10 years ago, let's just say, if one of these things happened, we would just be shocked. And now we're just desensitized. Thing after thing, like multiple times a day, crazy making things happen. And we just like, I'm just desensitized now to it. You kind of have to be to survive. But this is not the end. Stage 7 is where everything changes. Stage 7 is recovery. There's different research traditions, but the logic is shared between the individual and the nation. Judith Herman, she had work on trauma and recovery, and I love her work. And Bennett and Bandura's research on self-efficacy, which I'm all about teaching you guys, shows that recovery is powered by small, successful, self-directed actions. That's why on this channel, I talk about what's going on, but it's about these small moves, and we're going to go over some things you can do. And you repeating them, they compound. On the national side, Chenoweth and Stevens' research found that nonviolent movements succeed through broad, sustained, diverse participation. Look at me. I'm a blonde from the South woman who actually worked for the MAGA movement, Ronald Reagan, Young Conservatives of Texas. I'm a small voice. We're all voices. It's not one big thing. It's little things. And I know it's frustrating, but the benefit of that is we start to find a community that we didn't know existed. And on the individual side, it's these small skills, like you join this one little thing. You learn how to think for yourself a little bit more. You learn how to do something else. You go back to school. These things compound. And on the national level, you got people that are protesting, or people that are just using their brains, or people that are switching channels from the propaganda channels and start to think, or they're fact checking. It's just these little things that start to compound. And even though the controlling figure has taken over so much, they can't take over everything. You have agency. So it's small, self-directed, and repeated. Whether you're recovering from a gaslighting relationship or your country is recovering from decline, the engine is agency. I've seen this in my coaching practice hundreds of times. And it's probably one of my favorite things is watching the clients who recover. They're not the ones that make these big dramatic moves. It's the small things that compound. They're the ones that make one small decision for their self today, or an act of resistance, even if it can't be in your face. Then another one tomorrow, until one day they look up and they're somewhere completely different. I'm literally somewhere completely different. Stage 8, reconnection. On the individual side, the research is solid on post-traumatic growth. I was so grateful after my relationship that I had some kind of framework for post-traumatic growth, because when I realized I'd been betrayed, it felt like I could never recover. And to know that there was hope that you were going to emerge stronger was phenomenal. I held on to that, and I hope that you will too. There is documentation that people can emerge from trauma with 5 measurable areas of growth. 1, greater appreciation for life. 2, more meaningful relationships. Huge. 3, a recognition of personal strength. We are strong. New possibilities and priorities. It's number 4. And spiritual development. I'm living proof. I survived, and I'm sitting here today coaching other people. I have all of these things. Greater appreciation for life, more meaningful relationships, recognition of personal strength. I am so strong now, having gone through this. I want you to be too. There's new possibilities, new priorities, and spiritual development. Really understanding that there is something out there that empowers you. But political science doesn't have an equivalent finding of growth for nations. Transitions out of authoritarian rule do not reliably end in stronger democracy. Sometimes we get to choose. We're at this point where we get to decide what happens. Are we going to make sure the elections don't get stolen from us? Are we going to have institutional reform? Are we going to say, I don't want that ever to happen in America? Or are we going to keep going that way? We are at this point where we can grow and change or not. It's up to you. And I'm going to show you now what I want you to do so you can get clear on what you want next. So, what do you do with this? You've just walked away with 8 stages of control that operate the same way in your personal life in your country. That could be empowering or completely overwhelming. Let's make it empowering. So there is a model that this book I wrote, Control the Future, and we're going to learn, I'm going to show you how this works and how you need to use it for now. I'm just going to boil it down in a nutshell. The bigger the problem, the brighter the future. So you're just going to learn to think of everything you hate about that relationship, about the way it made you feel, and you're going to turn it around and you're going to think, this is the opposite of what I want now. And that's really your blueprint for your goals for yourself and for the country. One thing I am crazy for is I do not like the way people have been treated in this country. And I don't like mean people. And I feel very strongly. And so I know that the opposite for me is helping kindness, caring about people in this country. From a community standpoint, it's like we need to care about people again. We need to listen to people. We need to, as a community, come together and help each other. We need to make sure that our leaders represent us. You've been told the problem is you're overthinking, or that you're crazy, or you're too sensitive. You can't just go with the flow. But the data says something different. The data said that you've been subjected to predictable, documented patterns of control. And part of the pattern is making you believe the problem is you. And I've worked with so many people who are the scapegoat in their family. Gaslighting works by making you doubt your own perception. The response is, no, that's wrong. You don't feel that, or that's not valid. It works on individuals, it works on populations, and in a big way, the entire information environment is saturated with all these confusing narratives, and you start to trust nothing, including yourself. And I feel so angry that people are feeling this way right now. That's not an accident. That's stage 3 isolation, operating at scale. When you can't trust your own mind, you're easier to control. So we're going to give you another thing that you can work on here to think through what stage you personally are in now, or what stage the country is in right now. So that's the agency move that I want you to really think through. And I'll teach you more about it from this book, but basically it's really simple. The bigger the problem, the brighter the future, by just imagining the opposite, and that's your blueprint. And the great thing about these 8 stages, the way I've mapped them out, you can take what you're observing about the country and apply it in personal relationships, so you don't have to have a relationship like that. And if you've had a personal relationship like that, you can apply it to what's happening to the country right now. So what stage are you in? Pattern recognition is the first act of resistance. And you can say, wait, I'm being isolated right now. This is stage 3. Or this is the honeymoon. Wait a second. I don't know if I should trust this. You're going to create distance between yourself and the experience. You're observing it instead of it being done to you. Look at your life right now. Your relationship, your workplace, the news. Which stage are you experiencing? Write it down. Just naming it is agency. It's a self-directed action. Remember, it's those little steps. Recovery starts with small, self-directed actions. Step 2, find one outside witness. In personal relationships, it feels like there is no one that you can go to. You'll be punished. Or you just can't imagine doing that. They're terrified to do so. They've been so conditioned, they just aren't going to. So the better option, if you're on the outside looking in, is to befriend people and don't talk about the perpetrator. Just start to be their friend. The antidote is reconnection. Not 100 people, just one person you can trust. The child goes to the teacher. Very rarely happens. They're so scared. You are checking a book out at the library and you start talking about your love of bumblebees with the librarian. It's these small ways of connecting with anyone. Or if it's not a person, it's being attuned to one source of information, like looking outside and saying, wait, their relationship doesn't look like mine. So then you're not isolated, you're looking out, you're seeing something different. Step 3, take one small action today. It could be a phone call, writing in your journal, going for a walk, and letting your mind wander without input, muting a news source for 24 hours just to see how you feel. That's a big one. The action itself matters less than the fact that you chose it. You chose it. That's the engine. And the step 4 was to use what I just said, is start to give yourself a blueprint. So you can say, I don't like the way I've been treated. What I know I want now is to be treated well. So you have a North Star. You have hope. You have inspiration. All right. So here's that framework repeated. What stage am I in? Number 1, name it. Number 2, who is one outside witness I could talk to? 3, what is one small action I can do? Do it. And 4 is to use the problem equals the opposite future, so you can have hope and be inspired. It's not an easy thing to unwind if you're in it. I feel for you. We're going to keep making really cool content for you. And it's certainly a bewildering thing as a nation, but we are smart. So where is America now? We know there's a 24% decline in the liberal democracy index. Now, remember, this isn't about being conservative or liberal or those terms. It's just where our democracy is going. That means we're in the spiraling phase. Compounding changes, acceleration, normalization of what was unthinkable a few years ago. But guess what? Recovery stage 7. So if you want to know where we are, that's where we are. The map doesn't end in the spiral. It's recovery. So whether we're talking about your personal life or your country, the path out looks the same. Small, self-directed actions. Participation in any way you can. Go to the PTA meeting. I'm just telling you, just go to an event at your kid's school. Just like something, do something small. Do really small stuff, because bigger stuff can feel like intimidating or terrifying. You might be ready to do big things. It doesn't usually work that way. Country or not, small. Sustain small things, outside witnesses, pattern recognition. I'm a life coach who's watched hundreds of people walk out of the pattern. I've done it myself. I want you to fact check me. I want you to see if this resonates with you. I have to say, there's a disclaimer. I'm not the authority. It's just my opinion. It's just for educational purposes. I hope you take everything like that too. Even what your therapist says, I want you to start using your own brain. There are mean people out there. There are therapists who aren't good. There are therapists who are good. You get to choose. Educate yourself. Make these small changes. When I was a little girl, I can remember looking out the window thinking, I wish someone would rescue me. And you know what I learned? I can rescue myself. That doesn't mean we're an island, but we can rescue ourselves. You can rescue yourself one small step at a time, and you will see the spiritual development, which happens as a result of post-traumatic growth. You will see that things will work out for you. Things will happen, positive things. Now, I work with a limited number of coaching clients. Look on my tamigreen.com website. If you want to work with me tab. It's in the description too. I also write on Substack. There's lots of free content. Make sure you subscribe there. There's in-depth things. I'm going to have worksheets. But before you go, please leave a comment, even if it's a heart. It really helps me continue doing this work so I can keep giving you this content for free. All right. Until next time, take care. Talk soon. Say bye.
Bye.
See ya.